First contact. The sleek silver craft descended through Earth's atmosphere with barely a sound. Inside the United Nations headquarters in New York, William Carter straightened his tie for the 5th time and took a deep breath. As lead diplomat for humanity's first official alien contact, his stomach churned with equal parts excitement and terror. "They're landing now," said Olivia Martinez, checking her tablet. Her usually calm demeanor seemed strained today. "The Confederation representatives will be escorted directly here." William nodded. "How do I look?" "Like someone about to throw up," Olivia said with a small smile. "But your tie is straight, so there's that." The room fell silent as the doors opened. 4 beings entered, each distinctly non-human yet walking upright. Their leaders stood nearly 7 feet tall with iridescent blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Large, almond-shaped eyes dominated a face with minimal features, just small openings where a nose might be and a thin line for a mouth. Ambassador Vril Max of the Galactic Confederation, announced the UN Secretary-General. "Welcome to Earth." The alien delegation bowed slightly. When Vrilnax spoke, his words were translated through a small device at his throat. "We bring greetings from the 327 civilizations of the Confederation. Your world has reached the developmental threshold for first contact." The voice was flat, mechanical, but the words sent ripples of excitement through the room. William stepped forward. "Ambassador Vrilnax, I am William Carter, Earth's diplomatic liaison. We are honored by your presence." The meetings that followed were cordial but oddly formal. The aliens shared limited information about the Confederation, a governing body spanning thousands of light years, with member species from countless worlds. They explained their detection of Earth's radio signals decades ago and their monitoring since then. "Your technological progression has been interesting," Vrilnax said during their 3rd meeting. "Quite rapid in some areas, unusually slow in others." William noticed the slight hesitation. "We take pride in our accomplishments, though we recognize we have much to learn." One of the aliens, slightly shorter than the others with gray-purple skin, seemed to stare at William whenever he spoke. According to the introductions, this was Kvoth, a cultural attaché. Unlike the others, Kvoth asked specific questions about human history, art, and social structures. "Your species has survived multiple near-extinction events of your own making," Kvoth observed during a presentation on human history. "Fascinating resilience." Later that evening, William and Olivia reviewed notes in their office. "Is it just me," Olivia said, "or does something feel off about these meetings?" William frowned. "They're friendly enough. But they're holding back," Olivia finished. "The questions they asked seemed designed to categorize us somehow." William nodded. "And did you notice how the others reacted when Kvoth asked about our nuclear disarmament treaties?" Vril Max practically cut him off. "Speaking of strange behavior," Olivia said, lowering her voice despite being alone in the office, "I overheard 2 of them arguing in the hallway. My translator picked up fragments about classification status and resource rights." William's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Alan Foster at NASA. "Need to talk ASAP." Picked up unusual transmissions from Confederation ship to unknown locations. "Something bigger is happening here," William said, showing Olivia the message. "They're not just here for friendly introductions." As they gathered their things to meet with Alan, neither noticed the small surveillance device hidden in the ceiling panel, or that at that exact moment, Kvoth was reviewing their conversation with growing concern in his private quarters aboard the alien vessel. William and Olivia arrived at the NASA facility just after midnight. Security led them through a series of checkpoints before they reached Dr. Alan Foster's lab, tucked away in the basement level. "Thanks for coming so quickly," Alan said, looking up from his computer. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in days. "I've been monitoring communications from the Confederation ship since they arrived." "What have you found?" William asked. Alan pulled up a series of waveform patterns on his screen. "Most of their transmissions use encryption we can't break, but these particular signals use a form of compression similar to our own deep space communications. He clicked a button, and a rough translation appeared. Earth classification discussion scheduled. Developmental risk species assessment. Resource survey complete. Olivia leaned closer. Developmental risk species. What does that mean? Nothing good, Alan replied. I had our AI search for similar patterns in their data dumps. Look at this. He showed them images of 3 different planets, each with descriptions in partially translated Confederation language. These worlds were all classified as developmental risk in the past century. Within 5 years of classification, each one was placed under strict quarantine. No contact allowed in or out. William felt a chill run through him. They're planning to isolate us. But why? Olivia asked. We haven't threatened them. Before Alan could answer, William's secure phone buzzed. The message was from the UN. The Confederation had requested an emergency session for the following morning. The next day, Ambassador Vril Max addressed an emergency meeting of world leaders. His tone remained friendly, but his words carried an unmistakable warning. The Confederation Council will soon vote on Earth's status. While we see great potential in your species, there are concerns about your history of conflict and environmental management. After the meeting, rumors spread quickly. Diplomats from various nations approached William with concerns about what status might mean for Earth. We need more information, Olivia said as they walked back to their office. We can't prepare a defense if we don't know what we're being accused of. When they entered their office, they found a sealed envelope on William's desk. Inside was a data drive and a note written in careful English. Observation deck. Science building. Midnight. Come alone. Despite security concerns, William went to the meeting. He found Kvoth waiting, partially hidden in shadow. You are in danger, the alien said without preamble. Your entire species. What kind of danger? William asked. The Confederation is not what it appears to be, Kvoth replied. The data drive contains information about the true purpose of our visit. Earth sits on deposits of a material we call nfrium, extremely valuable for faster-than-light travel, and the developmental risk classification, a legal mechanism to bypass normal diplomatic protocols. Once classified, a world can be placed under Confederation protection, essentially allowing resource extraction without consent. William felt his heart racing. Why are you telling me this? Because it has happened before. 3 civilizations have already been exploited this way. My faction within the Confederation opposes these actions, but we are outnumbered. A noise from nearby made Kvoth tense. I must go. They are watching me. Review the data and prepare your defense. The council vote happens in 7 days. Before William could ask more questions, Kvoth vanished into the shadows. William clutched the data drive tightly as he made his way back to find Olivia and Alan. Somewhere above, in the Confederation ship, Ambassador Vril Max reviewed surveillance footage of the meeting with cold calculation in his large eyes. William, Olivia, and Alan gathered in a secure room deep within the Pentagon. They had requested this location after discovering their regular meeting places were likely bugged. The data drive from Kvoth lay connected to a standalone computer, its contents displayed on a large screen. This is worse than we thought, Alan said, pointing to a geological survey map of Earth. Bright spots marked locations across every continent. According to these files, Earth has the largest deposit of nfrium in this sector of the galaxy. Olivia studied the documents showing the fate of 3 other civilizations. The pattern is identical in each case. First contact, classification as developmental risk, then quarantine, followed by supervised resource extraction. Supervised resource extraction, William repeated bitterly. That's a nice way of saying they strip mine the planet while keeping the native population contained. The data showed images of one world called Terrace IV, once a vibrant blue-green planet, now scarred with massive mining operations. The native Teresians have been relocated to designated zones that comprised less than 10% of their original territories. Look at the timeline, Alan said. Within 20 years, the Teresian population declined by 60%. Their water sources were contaminated by mining runoff. William closed his eyes for a moment, and the Confederation covered it all up with bureaucratic language about protection and development supervision. The door opened, and a woman in a Navy uniform entered. "Commander Grace Phillips," she said by way of introduction. "I've been assigned to your team by the Joint Chiefs." After being briefed, Commander Phillips studied the tactical information with professional efficiency. "These Confederation ships," she said, pointing to vessels shown in the Teresian operation. "How do they compare to what's orbiting Earth now?" Alan pulled up comparison data. "The diplomatic vessel above us is lightly armed, but according to Koth's data, once a planet is classified, they bring in much larger ships. So we have a small window to prevent classification," Grace concluded. Kvoth provided information on the Confederation Council procedures. Olivia said, "We have the right to present a defense before the vote, if we can convince enough members that the classification is fraudulent." "We're talking about going up against an interstellar government that's been doing this for centuries," William interrupted. "What chance do we have?" The room fell silent until Grace spoke. "My grandfather fought at Normandy. Terrible odds, but they went anyway. Sometimes you fight not because you're certain you'll win, but because the alternative is unacceptable." A soft knock interrupted them. When William opened the door, Kvoth stood there, looking nervously over his shoulder. "I cannot stay long," the alien said. "Vrilnax suspects me. But I brought something else you need." He handed William a small crystal. "Council member profiles. Potential allies who might support your case. Focus on the Ardakians and the Lorian cluster representatives. They have opposed previous classifications." "Why are you risking so much to help us?" Olivia asked. Koth's expression was hard to read, but his voice carried emotion the translator couldn't fully convey. "My homeworld was the first. Before I was born, we were told it was necessary for the greater good. By the time the truth was known, our world was depleted, our culture shattered." He turned to leave, then paused. "Your species values something called justice. So do many in the Confederation, though our leaders have forgotten this. Perhaps together we can remind them." After Kvoth left, the four humans looked at each other, the weight of their responsibility settling heavily upon them. 7 days until the council meeting, William said, straightening his shoulders. "Let's get to work." William barely slept over the next 3 days. His apartment had become a war room, walls covered with information about the Confederation Council, its members, and their voting patterns. Every free surface held empty coffee cups and half-eaten meals. "The Ardakians have voted against classification in 2 previous cases," Olivia said, reviewing the crystal Kvoth had provided. "They seem to value artistic achievement highly." "Then we emphasize human creativity," William replied, making notes. "Music, literature, architecture, the works." Commander Phillips entered with a stack of folders. "I've compiled evidence countering their claims about human aggression. Yes, we've had wars, but we've also built peacekeeping institutions, the UN, Geneva Conventions, nuclear arms reduction." Alan looked up from his computer. "I've been analyzing the environmental data they're using against us. It's manipulated. They're projecting worst-case scenarios as if they're inevitable. We can challenge that." Their planning was interrupted by a soft tone from the secure communication device Kvoth had given them. A message appeared. "Meeting location compromised. Vrilnax knows of our contact. Council date moved forward. 3 days, not 7. Preparing transport for Earth delegation. They're trying to rush the process," Grace said. "Classic tactic when you're afraid of losing." William paced the room. "We need to be ready sooner than planned. Olivia, finalize our core presentation. Alan, compile the scientific evidence. Grace, work on security protocols for our journey." "Journey?" Olivia asked. The council meeting will be held on their central station, William explained. We'll be the first humans to leave the solar system. The next day brought another surprise. Kavoth arrived at the Pentagon with official documentation from the Confederation. Earth has been granted 4 representative slots at the council hearing, he explained. I secured clearance for all of you. Why 4? Grace asked suspiciously. Kavoth's translator conveyed something like amusement. I may have implied that Earth cultural norms require decisions to be witnessed by representatives of science, diplomacy, documentation, and defense. As they prepared for departure, William received a call from the president. Carter, we're putting the fate of humanity in your hands, the president said. Every nation is behind you. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. Thank you, Madam President, William replied. We won't let Earth down. That night, Kavoth taught them Confederation legal procedures. They practiced until exhaustion set in. Remember, Kavoth instructed, council members respond to confidence. Speak with authority. Address the senior council directly. Never show uncertainty. What about the opposition? Grace asked. Who leads them? Ambassador Drexmoor, Kavoth replied, displaying an image of a large reptilian being, head of the Resource Allocation Committee. Powerful, ruthless. He has financial interests in the mining operations. So it's about money, Olivia said. Some things are universal. Influence and power, Kavoth corrected. Invrium means both in our society. The day of departure arrived quickly. The 4 humans stood on a landing pad as Kavoth's personal shuttle descended from the Confederation ship. Second thoughts, Olivia asked William quietly. He looked at her, about facing an alien council to prevent Earth's exploitation. Terrified, but ready. Alan clutched his data pad nervously. I never thought my career would lead to being humanity's scientific defender. Just remember your training, Grace said calmly, though her hand rested near where her said arm would normally be. We prepared for this. The shuttle landed, its door opening to reveal Kavoth. The council awaits, he said. Are you prepared to defend your world? William looked back at Earth one last time before boarding. Let's make history, he said, preferably the kind where humanity remains free. As the shuttle lifted off, none of them noticed the small probe following at a discreet distance, transmitting their every word back to Ambassador Vrilnax. The Confederation's central station hung in space like an enormous metal snowflake, its 7 massive arms extending from a central hub. Each arm housed representatives from dozens of worlds. The human delegation stared in awe as their shuttle approached. It's beautiful, Olivia whispered, pressing her hand against the viewport. And intimidating, Alan added. Look at the size of it. Kavoth guided their shuttle into a docking bay, filled with vessels of various designs. The council chamber is in the central hub. We must proceed directly there. As they walked through the station corridors, William tried to maintain his composure despite the parade of alien beings they passed. Creatures with tentacles, multiple limbs, fur, scales, and features he couldn't even describe moved about their business. Some stopped to stare at the humans. First-time human representatives have been here, Kavoth explained. You are something of a curiosity. Wonderful, Grace muttered. I hate being a tourist attraction. They entered a vast circular chamber with tiered seating surrounding a central platform. Hundreds of beings filled the seats, their quiet conversations creating a low hum throughout the space. The classification hearing for Sol 3, designation Earth, will commence, announced a tall, willowy being with silvery skin. Ambassador Vrilnax will present the assessment. Vrilnax stepped onto the platform, his blue-green skin shimmering under the lights. Esteemed Council, our assessment of Sol 3 indicates a species at developmental risk threshold. Their technology has advanced rapidly, but their societal structures remain fractured. They have weapons of mass destruction, have caused significant damage to their ecosystem, and display aggressive tendencies toward different groups within their own species. Holograms appeared showing nuclear explosions, polluted rivers, and scenes from various human conflicts. For their protection, and in accordance with Statute 7293, we recommend classification as a developmental risk species with appropriate quarantine protocols. William felt his heart sink as murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Earth representatives may now address the council, the silver-skinned moderator announced. William stepped forward, trying to ignore the hundreds of alien eyes watching him. Esteemed council, he began, his voice steadier than he felt. The assessment you've heard presents a distorted view of humanity. Yes, we have made mistakes. Yes, we have faced conflicts. But that is only part of our story. New holograms appeared, showing Earth's natural beauty, medical advancements, art, and international cooperation. Humans have created vaccines that save millions of lives. We've built systems to resolve conflicts peacefully. We've written symphonies that express the deepest emotions. We've preserved vast wilderness areas. William was gaining confidence now. More importantly, we learn from our mistakes. Environmental protection laws are stronger than ever. Nuclear weapons have been reduced by over 70% in recent decades. Before William could continue, a large reptilian figure stood. "This is Ambassador Drex Moore," Kvoth whispered urgently. "These displays are meaningless," Drex Moore hissed. "The humans cannot be trusted with their own development. Our scans show they have already damaged 28% of their planetary ecosystem beyond recovery." Olivia stepped forward. "Those figures are manipulated. Dr. Foster will explain." Elan nervously approached the platform with his data. "Your analysis projects current trends without accounting for technological improvements. Our renewable energy implementation has increased by 40% in the last decade alone." The debate continued for hours. William noticed some council members nodding at their arguments, while others remained impassive. Finally, Drex Moore played his hand. "The humans are not telling you everything. Our surveillance indicates they are developing new weapon systems even as we speak." He displayed images of various military installations, many of which William didn't recognize. "They cannot be trusted," Drex Moore concluded. "Quarantine is the only safe option." As murmurs grew louder, Kvoth suddenly stood. "I request speaking rights under Confederation Bylaw 42. The chamber fell silent. The moderator looked surprised. "Granted, Delegate Kvoth." Kvoth stepped onto the central platform, his usually reserved demeanor replaced with something more determined. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. "Esteemed council members," Kvoth began, "I speak today not just as a cultural attaché, but as someone who has studied Earth and its people firsthand. What I have witnessed contradicts the official assessment in fundamental ways." William exchanged glances with Olivia. This wasn't part of their plan. "Ambassador Drex Moore speaks of humans developing weapons," Kvoth continued. "Yet he fails to mention that Earth has more international treaties limiting weapons development than any previous species at this technological stage." Kvoth activated his own holographic display. "These are the true mineral survey readings from Earth." The display showed concentrations of nfrium far larger than previously reported. Earth contains the largest nfrium deposits discovered in this galactic sector. Gasps and murmurs echoed through the chamber. "This classification attempt follows a pattern," Kvoth said, his voice growing stronger. "I have accessed sealed records from the Resource Allocation Committee." New images appeared showing the three worlds they had discussed earlier. Side-by-side comparisons revealed healthy planets before Confederation intervention and devastated landscapes after. Terrace IV, Luyten 8, Proxima Centauri b, all classified as developmental risk within the last 80 years, all containing significant nfrium deposits, all now under Confederation protection. Kvoth's translator couldn't hide the bitterness in the final word. Ambassador Drex Moore rose to his feet. "This is outrageous. These records are classified." "Yes," Kvoth replied calmly. "They are classified to hide the truth. I ask the council, Why would reports on planetary health be classified if the Confederation truly acted in these world's best interests? Kvoth display population statistics. Teresian population, reduced by 60%. Luitan native species, 17 now extinct. Proxima Centauri colonies, relocated to undesirable territories to make way for mining operations. The chamber erupted in shouted questions. The silver-skinned moderator called repeatedly for order. My own homeworld suffered this fate generations ago, Kvoth said when the noise subsided. We were told it was for our protection, for our development. We discovered too late it was for our resources. Kvoth turned to face Drex more directly. I have also accessed financial records showing transfers from mining corporations to private accounts belonging to certain resource committee members. Drexmore lunged forward. This is slander. The delegate is mentally unstable. Let him speak, called out a representative from the Ardakian delegation. Kvoth continued, undeterred. Humans are not perfect. No species is. But they deserve the same chance as any of us to grow, to learn, to join the galactic community as equals, not as exploited resources. He turned to address the entire chamber. The Confederation was founded on principles of mutual respect and cooperation. When did we abandon these values? When did we become the very thing our ancestors formed this council to prevent? The chamber had fallen completely silent. If we classify Earth as a developmental risk today, we are not protecting humans. We are not upholding our principles. We are betraying them for profit. I ask you, I implore you, vote against this classification. Kvoth stepped down from the platform. The silence lingered for several seconds before the chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates argued with each other across the aisles. The moderator called repeatedly for order. William looked at Kvoth with newfound respect. That was incredible. Kvoth's expression was grim and dangerous. Drexmore will not forgive this public exposure. As if on cue, the moderator announced, due to these serious allegations, the council will recess for 24 hours to review the evidence presented. All delegates are ordered to remain on station. As they left the chamber, William noticed security personnel following their group at a distance. Beside him, Commander Phillips had noticed too. We've stirred up the hornet's nest, she whispered. Stay alert. This isn't over. The human delegation was escorted to a small suite of rooms in the station's diplomatic sector. The accommodations were comfortable enough, but William noticed there was no way to communicate with Earth or access station systems. We're being isolated, Grace said, checking the sealed doorway, polite word for detained. Olivia looked worried. What happens now? Kvoth exposed corruption at the highest levels. The council seemed shocked by the evidence, Alan said hopefully. Many delegates were clearly disturbed by those records. William wasn't convinced. Shock doesn't mean they'll act. Powerful people protect their interests. Kvoth had disappeared immediately after the hearing. He had whispered quickly to William, if we are separated, meet at Docking Bay 7 at the third rest period, before security personnel had guided them to their quarters. Hours passed with no word from anyone. The tension grew until a soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal a tall, thin alien with pale yellow skin. I am Delegate Jen of the Lorian Cluster, the being said. I must speak quickly. You are in danger. What's happening? William asked. Kvoth has been detained on charges of sharing classified information. Drexmore's faction is pushing for immediate memory reconstruction. Memory reconstruction? Alan asked. A procedure that erases specific memories, Jen explained. They will remove his knowledge of the corruption, his memories of helping you. He will be change. Grace stepped forward. Can you help us find him? That's why I'm here. Many delegates were moved by Kvoth's evidence, but few will act openly against Drexmore. I can provide access codes to the security section. Jen handed William a small device. Kvoth helped my world once. I repay that debt now, but I was never here. With that, the alien left quickly. Memory reconstruction. Olivia repeated with horror. They're going to silence him permanently. William checked the time. Third rest period begins in 2 hours. We need a plan to reach Docking Bay 7 and find Kavoth. Using Jen's device, they discovered their quarters weren't locked, just monitored. Grace disabled the surveillance system, and they slipped into the corridor. The station's night cycle had begun, reducing the number of beings moving about. Following Jen's access codes, they navigated through service corridors toward the security sector. Twice they had to hide from patrol drones. The detention cells should be ahead, William whispered as they approached a secured doorway. The access code worked, and they entered a dimly lit hallway lined with transparent cell doors. Most were empty, but in the last cell, they found Kavoth lying motionless on a narrow bench. Kavoth, William called softly, pressing Jen's device against the door lock. The alien's eyes opened slowly. William Carter, you shouldn't be here. The procedure is scheduled for morning. As the door slid open, alarms suddenly blared throughout the section. Unauthorized access detected in Security Sector 12, announced an automated voice. They've overridden Jen's codes, Grace said. We need to move now. They helped Kavoth to his feet. He was weak but able to walk. This way, he directed them toward a maintenance shaft. We can reach Docking Bay 7 through service tunnels. As they moved through the narrow passages, Kavoth explained, I prepared for this possibility. A ship is waiting, piloted by others who oppose Drexmoor's faction. You're not the only one fighting this corruption. Ellen asked. No. There is a growing movement within the Confederation. Your case has become a rallying point. They emerged into Docking Bay 7 just as security forces entered from the main corridor. Grace pulled them behind cargo containers as energy weapons fired in their direction. The ship is there. Kavoth pointed to a small vessel near the bay doors. But we'll never reach it with security blocking the way. William noticed a control panel nearby. What does that control? Bay atmosphere and doors, Kavoth replied. William's eyes widened. If we decompressed the bay, security would be forced to retreat. Grace finished. But we'd have about 15 seconds to reach the ship before emergency protocols seal everything. William looked at his team. It's our only chance. Ready to run for our lives. Grace moved to the control panel. Everyone get ready. When I activate the decompression sequence, we'll have 15 seconds. Kavoth, can you make it? The alien nodded weakly. I will manage. William looked at his team. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Now. Grace slammed her hand against the emergency override. Warning lights flashed as a computerized voice announced. Warning. Bay decompression in 5 seconds. All personnel evacuate immediately. The security forces turned and ran toward the exit as air began rushing out of the bay. The humans and Kavoth sprinted toward the waiting ship, fighting against the increasing pull of escaping atmosphere. Olivia reached the ship first and slapped the entry panel. The door slid open as Alan and William half-carried Kavoth across the final stretch. Grace was last, diving through the entrance as the ship's door sealed behind them. Inside, they found 2 aliens waiting, members of Kavoth's resistance movement. You made it, said one, a stocky being with rough gray skin. I am Trell, and this is Mira. He gestured to a slender, 4-armed pilot already activating the ship's systems. Where are we going? William asked as they strapped into seats. First, away from this station, Trell replied. Then we implement the second part of Kavoth's plan. The ship detached from the docking clamps and shot away from the station. Almost immediately, warning signals flashed across the control panels. 2 patrol vessels in pursuit, Mira announced calmly, her 4 hands moving across different controls simultaneously. Kavoth, looking stronger now, moved to a communications console. While I was in detention, I managed to access their central archives. I downloaded everything: financial records, communication logs, classified directives about Earth and previous exploited worlds. "What good is that if we're captured?" Grace asked. Kvoth smiled. At least William thought it was a smile. "We're not going to be captured, and we're not running away." Mira executed a series of maneuvers that momentarily confused their pursuers. "Ready for transmission," she called out. Kvoth activated a sequence of commands. The Confederation prides itself on transparency to member worlds. In theory, every planet in the Confederation has a public information receiver that, by law, cannot be disabled. William's eyes widened as he understood. "You're broadcasting the evidence to every inhabited world in the Confederation," Kvoth confirmed. 327 planets are receiving proof of corruption right now. On screen, they could see their pursuers suddenly slow and then stop. New communications poured in from the station. "The Council is calling an emergency session," Trell reported. "They're ordering us to return as honored guests, not prisoners." 6 hours later, William stood again before the Confederation Council. This time, Ambassador Drexmoor was notably absent, along with several key members of his faction. The silver-skinned moderator addressed the assembled delegates, based on evidence presented by Delegate Kvoth and confirmed by independent verification. This council finds the classification assessment of Earth to have been fraudulently conducted. Cheers erupted from many delegations. Furthermore, this council has voted to establish an independent commission to investigate previous classifications and provide reparations where appropriate. Earth is hereby invited to join the Confederation as a provisional member with full rights. When William and his team returned to Earth 3 days later, they brought with them not just a diplomatic victory, but the beginning of a new era. Kvoth, now appointed as special liaison to Earth, stood beside them at the United Nations. "Your world faced a threat you never imagined," Kvoth told the assembled leaders. "But in defending yourselves, you have changed the Confederation. You reminded us of principles we have forgotten." William looked out at the gathered representatives of humanity. "We went to defend Earth," he said. "We ended up defending something larger, justice across the stars." As the assembly erupted in applause, Olivia leaned close to William. "Not bad for your first alien negotiation," she whispered. William smiled. "Something tells me it won't be the last." In Earth's night sky, visible to the naked eye for the first time, the lights of Confederation ships twinkled, not as threats, but as the first bridges to humanity's galactic future.